All right, thanks for stopping in. And, usually I kind of used to avoid talking about anything that wasn't about mythology, just trying to keep the channel very focused. But, I do feel like I have a little bit of a responsibility, at least to my own community, that, I have a platform that I know is supported mainly by my community. And when something like this significant is in front of us, we have to use our communication tools. So I wanted to talk a little bit about just the idea of segregation because that seems like that's the food for the day in America as we regress into Trump's America. And there's a couple of angles really looking at segregation. Segregation by itself was not necessarily bad for people, and I'm going to explain to you why. But segregation comes along with a history of violence, and I'm going to explain that as well, like why we're seeing it. So, just talking about the places that were destroyed, and there's a lot more even than the ones that I'll mention, but we'll start off with probably the most infamous, which is Black Wall Street, which is Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is particularly important for my personal lineage. This is where my grandfather grew up. This event takes place in 1921. My grandfather was born in 1919. So this is the area where, as a prosperous black community, where they would have gone to bankers for their business enterprises and things of that nature. And Greenwood was filled with mostly prosperous black communities. It was one of the most prosperous black communities in the U.S., filled with black-owned businesses, theaters, doctors, lawyers. And a white mob obviously came in and destroyed it. They destroyed 1,200 homes as well as hospitals, schools, and businesses. The death toll rising is maybe as high as 300. Thousands were left homeless. No reparations. So think about the impact on these communities. Rosewood in Florida was destroyed in 1923. Similar conditions. It was a self-sufficient black town. A white woman made a false accusation claiming that a black man assaulted her, and that descended all these white men with violence, and it was burned to the ground. Dozens were murdered. Entire city was wiped off the map. No reparations. Reparations were made in the 1990s, decades after the crime had actually been perpetrated. In Elaine, Arkansas, in September 1919, black sharecroppers were organizing for better wages, and the white planters responded with brutal violence. It's estimated that 200 black people were killed in what is considered one of the deadliest racial conflicts in U.S. history. Wilmington in North Carolina in 1898 was a thriving middle-class black community, had black politicians in office. White supremacist mob staged a coup, overthrew the elected government, and massacred the black residents. 60 black people were killed, black property was destroyed, and the city was taken back by white supremacists. This is a successful coup d'etat on U.S. soil. The Central Park, or Seneca Village in New York, this is even closer to being something more prevalent for everyone, right? This happens in 1857, and this was a village of black and Irish immigrant community in what is now called Central Park. It had churches, homes, and schools. The city seized the land in an eminent domain. Hundreds of families were displaced and their land was stolen. They were never compensated for this land. In OC Massacre in Florida, which happened on November 2nd, 1920, which is election day, black citizens were trying to vote. White mobs responded with mass violence. The town was burned to the ground. The black residents were killed. Survivors fled and were never able to return. Colfax Massacre in Louisiana, 1873. During Reconstruction, a white militia attacked black citizens defending their political rights. Over 100 black men were killed, leading to an event that actually gutted the federal government's ability to persecute racial crimes. And in Durham, North Carolina, in 1960, there was a thriving town. Haiti was a vibrant black business district, and it was not destroyed by violent mobs. There was other tactics, including running a highway construction, urban renewal. Were disproportionately displacing black residents. And this was a pattern that would be used later on to erase black neighborhoods under the guise of progress. So the idea is that, one, with segregation, black communities thrived. Black communities thrived under segregation. We had our own policing force, so the violence that we known under white police was automatically gone. We were able to put in our own schools, so our education systems were better. We were spending black dollars in black businesses. This is a recipe that works for black people. It worked so well that the white establishment wanted to destroy it. So this is what we're looking at. If we're forced if it looks like we're moving towards the path towards segregation, I look forward to being able to, commiserate with black people, to do business with black people, knowing that we have a history of building thriving citizens and communities and providing for ourselves. But we know what comes next when that city starts to do too well, and it will. We will face racism, we will face violence, and we will face the wrath of the government for simply doing the things that benefit us. So segregation is a double-edged sword. We're not afraid of segregation. We understand the pitfalls of segregation. We do not mind living among ourselves and doing business with each other. That's not the downside of it at all. We embrace that, but we have to be aware of, the violence that comes along from a certain group, because a certain group has their own agenda and they need to be held accountable for that. So those are my thoughts on segregation and what we're facing going forward.